If you've spent the last few months learning AI governance frameworks, the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, the ISO 42001, the EU AI Act, I've got slightly uncomfortable news. Search any of them for the word agentic AI. It's barely there, which means the frameworks that you work so hard to learn doesn't actually name agentic AI, which are the systems that are currently showing up at work right now. So what do? That's the real debate. It's either invent new agentic frameworks or you extend the ones you already know. Stay with me till the end and you will walk away with three things. One, a clear read on which side actually wins, the exact move that I'll make and why, and a way to extend a framework that you already know so that it covers agentic AI, whether you're breaking in or you're running a new team. And later in the video, I will show you a simple one-page mapping worksheet that you can use to take any existing AI governance framework and add an agentic AI layer underneath it. Welcome back. My name is Obi, and I help professionals transition into AI governance, and I help organizations build governance programs that are specific to their own processes. Let's define some terms. Agentic AI is not the typical model that answers questions and then waits. An agent plans across multiple steps. It keeps memories. It takes actions, usually with humans only loosely in the loop or not in the loop at all. Now, the frameworks, the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, published early in 2023, is a voluntary technology agnostic or technology neutral framework. It has four functions that I call the GMs3: the govern, the map, the measure, and the manage. We also have the ISO 42001, which was published late 2023, the first AI management system standard, the thing that you wrap around your AI program. And then we have the EU AI Act, known as the most comprehensive AI law to date. Now, think about what all these three things assume. They assume that you can describe a system's behavior in advance and that an action traces back to a human. An agent that browses and executes code and sends emails on its own breaks both of those assumptions. That's where the consensus ends. Knowing how agentic AI operates, no one can argue that those foundational frameworks fully cover agentic AI systems. Now, the disagreement starts with this next question. What do we do about it? What do we do now that we know that these frameworks don't really cover agentic systems? There are two positions here. Both are held by really serious people with real money and time on both sides. Position one is build new agentic specific governance. The argument is that agentic systems are different enough in kind that bolting them onto old frameworks creates false confidence. The idea is that you need purposefully built standards that cover autonomy levels, cover delegation rules, tool use controls, and drift detection. Singapore did exactly this. In January 2026, their regulator, the IMDA, released what is now described as the world's first national framework that is purpose-built for agentic AI. The Cloud Security Alliance, CSA, is also building a whole parallel stack complete with agentic threat models and red teaming guides. This camp says when there's a new problem, we build new instruments. Now there's a second camp and they have a position and it's saying extend what we already have. Don't build something new. Let's just extend what we have. So the argument is that every new capability spawning its own framework is how we end up with more standards than anyone can actually apply. You get overlapping guidance and you govern none of it well. So specific to the EU AI Act, one major analysis argues that the law, in fact, already applies to agentic AI. They are saying that we should interpret and extend it and don't start over. Now, this camp says intensify what works and don't reinvent it. Now, notice what's happening here. There are two leading jurisdictions. They are splitting on this in real time. Singapore invented a new system of governance for agentic AI, and the EU is extending it. Now, that's the debate that's playing out right now. No one has a finished answer yet. We're watching the answer get built in real time. I don't think this is a clean either or. And so, where you land on the positions will change what you actually do. So, stay with me because the next few minutes are the part that you can actually act on, whether you're an individual or you run a team. So, this is what I think about all of this. Extend what we have first. Invent only where there's a true structural gap. The foundations are your backbone. They're the shared language that we already have with legal, with risk, and the boards. They're how your governance stays understandable to everyone who isn't down in the agentic AI weeds. So I wouldn't give up on that. But where agents will genuinely break the model is in how we handle identity, how we handle autonomy, and real time action. That's where we need to build purpose built controls. And the better move is to map those new controls back onto the framework that we already run, not stand up a whole second system alongside it. So it's foundation plus a targeted agentic layer. Extend by default and then invent on purpose if needed. The field seems to be converging on this. Even the new frameworks that are being built are built to sit on top of NIST and not replace it. So, if you're trying to break into AI governance, here is what I would not do. I wouldn't drop the frameworks that you're learning. I will add one agentic layer on top of it this quarter. Start free, read the OWASP Agentic AI threat and mitigations, and then read the Singapore IMDA Agentic Framework. It's public and it's concrete. Then get good at one thing. Take a NIST function, say maybe manage, and then write the agentic specific controls that will sit underneath it. So maybe it's the identity, least privilege, rollback. That extends your skill. The skill that you build in bridging the old network with new controls is what teams are short on right now. So if you're already doing that work, if you're already in the field, try asking your managers a question on your next one-on-one. Are we inventing a new agentic governance or are we extending what we already have? Now, the answer will tell you which roles your team is about to create and whether you should raise your hand for them. Let me make this a bit more concrete because extending the framework can sound abstract until you actually do it. I put together a one-page worksheet for this. I'm going to link it below. Let me walk you through this with one single row. There are 5 columns here. We're going to take a NIST function, any function at all, on the left and work across. Let's use a govern, for instance, the function about accountability and who owns what. What does it quietly assume? That an action traces back to an accountable person. Where do agents break? When an agent acts across systems, you get an attribution gap. You can't always tell whether the employee, the agent, or the platform actually did the thing. OWASP agentic framework is actually very blunt on this. So what's the control that we add here? We give the agent its own governed identity. We give it a least privileged scope, and we log every action to that identity, not a borrowed human login. And where does it all come from? You don't have to invent it. It's already in OWASP agentic guidance and the Cloud Security Alliance control matrix. That's a whole move. One NIST function mapped to one real control, pooled from a public framework. Do that across all 4 functions, and you've extended your foundation instead of replacing it. Fill it in for your own systems. It works whether you are prepping for an interview or you're drafting your organization's first agentic policy. So if you'd rather not assemble this alone, structured guidance is also an option. My training program works through this extend first approach step by step. And there's a link below if that's useful to you. Now, if you run a team, this debate stops being academic very quickly. The first thing I would do is find your agent, do an inventory. Most organizations already have agentic AI. You're governing it whether you've named it or not. The second thing is identity. It helps to treat an enterprise agent less like a feature and more like a digital employee. Give it its own identity, least privileged scope, and credentials in a vault. Without a governed identity, you can't reliably attribute actions, and most of your other controls get shaky underneath that. The third thing is to have audit trails. The shift here is to build them for disputes and for when problems come knocking, and not for debugging. When an agent acts across systems, you want a reconstructible history of what it did and why before something ever reaches a regulator or maybe even a court. Fourth, it's worth drawing some hard lines. Until you have real observability and reliable rollback, some workflows are better just kept off limit to anything that can move money, anything that can change access controls without a human in the loop. Now, if you operate in multiple jurisdictions, the extend first approach becomes even more important because you may have one team thinking in terms of NIST and another in terms of the ISO and another in terms of EU AI Act, and then another in terms of cybersecurity or even the model risk management. The idea here is that the goal is not to create 5 or 6 disconnected governance programs. The goal is to build one governance backbone with mapped control layers. And that is how you keep the system legible and you reduce duplications. So let's pull this back together. The framework you learned are not wrong. They are also not obsolete. They just don't refer to agentic systems enough yet. And that is why the field is now debating whether to invent new governance frameworks or extend the ones we already have. My answer is extend first, then invent on purpose. For individuals, that means keeping your foundation and learning how to build the agentic layer underneath it. That is how you stand out in interviews. You build artifacts and you show practical judgment. For organizations, it means identifying your agents, governing their identity, designing audit trails, and setting hard boundaries and mapping new controls back to the frameworks that you already have. The worksheet gives you a place to start. Now, and if this is a kind of work that you want to learn and not just memorizing frameworks, but building governance artifacts that you can explain in interviews and use in real organizations, this is what I do in my governance program. No pressure either way. The link is in the description below, right next to the free worksheet. Now, tell me in the comments, is your organization inventing new agentic governance or extending what you already built? And which do you think is right? Subscribe if you want more content like this. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.